The ember of a dying fire spat a final, defiant spark, a fleeting star against the oppressive dark of the alley. He saw his own reflection in that spark, a brief, intense flicker of what could have been, swallowed by the suffocating gloom of what was. The man's name was Elias, but he hadn't felt like Elias in a long time. He was a ghost haunting the corridors of his own life, a collection of apologies and hesitations stitched together in the shape of a man. The cold brick pressed against his back wasn't nearly as cold as the fear that had taken up permanent residence in his bones. It was a tenant that never paid rent but owned the entire building. Tonight, the fear had a voice. It was the low growl of the two figures blocking the alley's exit, their silhouettes monstrous against the distant city glow. They hadn't said a word, but their intentions were a language Elias understood fluently. It was the language of predation, of power dynamics skewed so violently in their favor that his own existence felt like a whisper in a hurricane. He clutched the thin strap of his satchel, the worn leather a pathetic shield against the impending storm. Inside was nothing of value to them, just sketches, dreams committed to paper, the last remnants of a man who once believed he had something to say. To them, he was an opportunity, a footnote in their evening's narrative of casual cruelty. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic prisoner rattling its cage. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to disappear, to become even smaller than he already felt. But there was nowhere to go. The alley was a dead end, a perfect metaphor for his life. And as their shadows fell over him, eclipsing the last of the light, a thought, cold and sharp as a shard of glass, pierced through the fog of his terror. It wasn't a thought of defiance. It wasn't a surge of courage. It was a question, a horrifyingly simple one that held the weight of his entire existence. Is this all I am? A prey animal waiting for the inevitable? The question hung in the air, more menacing than the figures before him, because he knew the answer. For years, the answer had been yes. Yes, he was the one who stepped off the sidewalk when others approached. Yes, he was the one who lowered his gaze, who swallowed his words, whose opinions were softened into suggestions until they vanished entirely. He had cultivated a life of minimal friction, a life designed to avoid this very moment, yet here it was. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of irony. It had cornered him not to test his strength but to force him to witness its absolute absence. The first man took a step forward, the scraping of his boot on the gravel a countdown to oblivion. Elias' breath hitched. His body, a traitorous vessel, was already preparing for surrender. His shoulders slumped. His hands trembled. He was a masterpiece of fear, a sculpture carved from a lifetime of retreat. But then something else happened. Beneath the tidal wave of panic, a deeper current stirred. It was a flicker of anger so faint he almost missed it. It wasn't anger at them. It was anger at himself. Anger at the years he had spent feeding the fear, nurturing it, allowing it to grow until it had consumed him whole. The fear had promised him safety. It had whispered that if he just stayed small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, he would be spared. It was a lie, a devastating, soul-crushing lie. Here in this filthy alley, with the scent of garbage and rain filling his nostrils, the lie was exposed. His carefully constructed world of non-confrontation had led him not to a peaceful harbor, but to the executioner's block. The anger was a strange warmth spreading through his icy veins. It wasn't a raging fire, not yet. It was a pilot light, a tiny, resilient flame that had somehow survived the years of being doused by anxiety and self-doubt. It was the ghost of the boy who once climbed trees, the echo of the young man who once argued his passions with fire in his eyes. It was the remnant of the real Elias. He looked at the men, truly looked at them for the first time. Not as insurmountable monsters, but as what they were, two people who had chosen to build their strength on the weakness of others. They fed on fear. It was their currency, their nourishment. And he, for his entire adult life, had been an all-you-can-eat buffet. The thought was so absurd, so tragically comical, that a sound escaped his lips. It wasn't a scream or a whimper. It was a low, dry chuckle. The men paused. Confusion flickered across their faces. This was not the reaction they expected. They were orchestrators of terror, and their symphony was being interrupted by this strange, discordant note. The chuckle died, but the pilot light inside him grew brighter. It illuminated the landscape of his own mind, revealing the truth of his prison. The bars weren't made of steel, they were made of his own thoughts. The guards weren't external forces, they were his own beliefs. He had been his own jailer. The fear was still there, a coiling serpent in his gut. But for the first time, it was not the only thing he felt. Alongside it, this new, unfamiliar warmth of indignation was rising. It was the feeling of a king, long dethroned, remembering the weight of his crown. It was the stirrings of a relentless mind, born not from the absence of fear but from its ashes. He didn't know if he would walk out of this alley. He didn't know if he would survive the next 5 minutes. But as he slowly, deliberately, straightened his posture, as he lifted his chin and met their predatory gaze with something other than terror, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The man who had walked into this alley would not be the one who left it. One way or another, the ghost was about to die. And from those ashes, something new, something forged in the crucible of this ultimate fear, was beginning to rise. The question now was not whether they would destroy him, but whether he would allow his fear to remain his master. For the first time, the answer was a defiant, earth-shaking no. This was not a negotiation with his terror. This was a declaration of war. A war for his own soul, fought in the darkness of a forgotten alley, with the city as its silent witness. What does it take to stop being the prey? To stop being the one who flinches, who apologizes for their own existence? It takes a moment. A single moment of utter clarity, usually found in the darkest of places. It's the moment you realize that the safety you've been chasing by avoiding conflict is an illusion. The real danger was never the monster in the alley. It was the monster in your mind. The one that told you to stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. The one that fed on your potential and shat out mediocrity. That voice, the voice of fear, is the most dangerous predator you will ever face, because it doesn't just want your wallet or your physical safety. It wants your life. Not your heartbeat, not your breath, but the very essence of you. It wants to consume your ambition, your courage, your spirit, until all that's left is a hollow shell, walking through a world of vibrant color and shades of gray. You've listened to that voice, haven't you? You've let it dictate your choices. You've let it convince you that you're not good enough, not strong enough, not ready. It's the voice that makes you rehearse a simple phone call in your head 5 times before dialing. It's the voice that makes you accept disrespect because you're terrified of the confrontation that would follow if you stood up for yourself. It's the voice that keeps you in a job you hate, a relationship that drains you, a life that is a pale imitation of the one you dream of in your quietest moments. You have built a prison of comfort around yourself, and you have mistaken it for a kingdom. But the walls are closing in. Every day you choose comfort over courage, you add another brick to those walls. Every time you retreat from a challenge, you reinforce the bars. And one day, you will wake up like Elias in that alley, and you will realize you are completely, utterly trapped. Not by external circumstances, but by the weakness you have cultivated within yourself. This is the silent war being waged inside every single person who feels that gnawing dissatisfaction with their life. The war between the part of you that craves security and the part of you that craves greatness. For too long, you have let security win. You have traded the thrill of the hunt for the safety of the cage. The result? A life of quiet desperation. A life of what-ifs and I should-haves. A life where you watch others seize the opportunities you were too afraid to even reach for. The rise of a relentless mind begins with the death of that comfortable self. It begins when the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. It starts in your own personal alley when you are face to face with a threat that your old coping mechanisms, avoidance, submission, invisibility, can no longer handle. It is in that moment of crisis that you are given a choice. You can let the fear consume you one final time, or you can find that pilot light within you, that ember of defiance, that spark of the person you were meant to be before the world taught you to be afraid. This is not about becoming fearless. Fear is a part of our biology. It's a tool. The problem is you have allowed the tool to become the master. A relentless mind doesn't eliminate fear. It subjugates it. It harnesses its energy. It looks fear directly in the eye and says, "You are with me, but you do not command me. You are the passenger, but I am the one who steers." The transformation from a fearful mindset to a relentless one is the most profound journey a human being can take. It is the alchemy of turning lead into gold, of turning a victim into a warrior. It is not a journey for the faint of heart. It will require you to confront every lie you've ever told yourself. It will demand that you walk willingly into the very fires you have spent your life avoiding. But the reward is not just success, or achievement, or confidence. The reward is freedom. True freedom. The freedom to be yourself, unapologetically and without reservation. The freedom to pursue your goals without the constant drag of self-doubt. The freedom that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that no matter what alley life corners you in, you will not be a victim. You will be the one who decides the outcome. The story of Elias is your story. His alley is your dead-end job, your toxic relationship, your crippling anxiety. His choice is your choice. Will you remain the ghost in your own life? Or will you let the ashes of your fear become the fertile ground for the rise of your relentless mind? The choice is yours. The war has already begun. The first principle in forging a relentless mind is to understand the nature of your true enemy. Your enemy is not the man in the alley, not your critical boss, not the person who cut you off in traffic. These are merely catalysts. They are sparring partners provided by fate to test your resolve. Your true enemy is the inner narrator, the voice in your skull that weaves stories of inadequacy and impending doom. This narrator is a master storyteller. It has been studying you your entire life. It knows your deepest insecurities, your most painful memories, your most shameful secrets, and it uses this knowledge to construct a narrative of your life where you are the perpetual underdog, the one who is always fated to lose. Elias, standing in that alley, was living out a script written by his inner narrator, a script titled The Inevitable Victim. Every event in his life had been interpreted through the lens of this script. The time he was laughed at in school for his drawing, proof that his art was worthless, the promotion he was passed over for, evidence of his inherent incompetence, the relationship that ended, confirmation of his unlovability. The narrator took the raw data of his life and twisted it into a story of failure, and because he believed the story, he lived it. He made choices that aligned with the character of the inevitable victim. He didn't apply for the art scholarship. He didn't speak up in meetings. He didn't open himself up to new relationships. His reality was a self-fulfilling prophecy, scripted and directed by the tyrant in his mind. The two men in the alley were not an anomaly. They were the climax of the movie he had been starring in his whole life. To rewrite the script, you must first become aware of the narrator. You must learn to separate its voice from your own. This is the practice of metacognition, of thinking about your thoughts. Most people are completely fused with their inner narrator. They believe its pronouncements are gospel truth. "I'm not a confident person," the narrator says, and you accept it as a fundamental, unchangeable fact of your identity. "This is going to be a disaster," it whispers, and you feel the anxiety as if the disaster has already happened. The relentless mind learns to create a space between the self and the narrator. It learns to observe the story without getting lost in it. When the narrator begins its tale of woe, the relentless mind doesn't argue. It doesn't try to suppress the voice. It simply observes. It says, "Ah, the narrator is telling the I'm not good enough story again. Interesting." This act of observation is incredibly powerful. It changes your relationship with your thoughts. You are no longer the character in the story, you are the audience. And as the audience, you can begin to critique the performance. You can see the plot holes, the lazy character development, the repetitive themes. you can see that the narrator is not a reliable source of information. It is a biased, fear-mongering propagandist whose only goal is to keep you in the prison of the familiar. Elia's chuckle was the first crack in the narrator's control. It was a moment of separation. In that instant, he was not the terrified victim. He was an observer, witnessing the absurdity of his own situation. He was seeing the script for what it was, a tragedy that was bordering on farce. Once you have created this space, the next step is to challenge the narrative. Not with blind optimism, but with cold, hard evidence. The narrator deals in sweeping generalizations and catastrophic predictions. Your job is to become a detective, a fact-checker of your own mind. The narrator says, "You fail at everything you try." The detective asks, "Is that really true? Can I find a single instance in my entire life where I tried something and succeeded?" Perhaps you learned to ride a bike. Perhaps you passed an exam. Perhaps you cooked a decent meal. Find the evidence that contradicts the narrator's story. The narrator will dismiss this evidence. It will say, "That doesn't count, that was just luck, that was easy." Do not engage in a debate, simply note the evidence, collect it, build a case file for your own competence. This is not about creating a new delusional narrative of "I am the greatest." It is about dismantling the old delusional narrative of "I am worthless." It is about moving towards a more objective, evidence-based view of yourself. The narrator thrives in the dark. It loves ambiguity and speculation. It spins its most terrifying tales about the future, a realm where there is no contradictory evidence. If you ask for that raise, your boss will laugh in your face and then fire you. How do you challenge a story about the future? You don't. You run an experiment. The relentless mind is a scientist. It treats the narrator's predictions as hypotheses to be tested. The hypothesis is, asking for a raise will lead to humiliation and termination. The experiment is, ask for the raise. The only way to prove the narrator wrong is to collect the data. You have to walk into the fire, you have to make the call, you have to have the difficult conversation. Will it be uncomfortable? Yes. Will your heart be pounding? Absolutely. The narrator will be screaming in your ear, telling you to abort the mission. This is the point of maximum resistance. This is the moment where you choose between the old script and a new one. In the alley, Elias' experiment was simple. The narrator's hypothesis was, if you show any form of resistance, they will hurt you more. Submission is your only chance of survival. The old Elias would have accepted this hypothesis as fact. But the new, emerging Elias, the one who had separated from the narrator, decided to test it. His experiment was to stand up straight, to meet their gaze. It was a small act, but it was a radical departure from the script. He was collecting new data. He was introducing a new variable into the equation of his life. Forging a relentless mind begins here in the quiet theater of your own skull. It begins with you realizing that the story you've been living is just that, a story, and you are not the character. You are the writer. The narrator is just a first draft, a collection of bad ideas and tired tropes. It's time to pick up the red pen and begin the edit. It's time to write a story worthy of your potential, a story of courage, of resilience, of strength. A story where you are not the victim in the alley, but the hero who walks out of it, scarred perhaps, but unbroken, and ready for the sequel. The second pillar in the construction of a relentless mind is the deliberate practice of voluntary hardship. Our modern world is a conspiracy against our own resilience. It is a relentless pursuit of comfort, ease, and the elimination of all friction. We have thermostats that keep us at a perfect temperature, cars that transport us with minimal effort, and devices that deliver endless streams of dopamine with the flick of a thumb. We have systematically outsourced our own strength. We have become domesticated animals, living in a gilded cage of our own making, and we wonder why we are so fragile, so easily broken by the slightest deviation from our comfortable routines. The voice of fear, your inner narrator, loves this state of affairs. It thrives in the fertile soil of comfort. Why? Because a life devoid of chosen struggle leaves you utterly unprepared for the unchosen struggles that life will inevitably throw at you. When you have never tested your limits, you have no idea where they are. You assume they are much closer than they actually are. The narrator tells you that you can't handle discomfort, and because you've never willingly experienced it, you believe it. You become terrified of the cold, of hunger, of exhaustion, of social awkwardness, of failure. These are not just physical or emotional states, they become existential threats. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would periodically live as if he were poor. He would wear the roughest clothes, eat the cheapest food, and sleep on the hard floor. He wasn't a masochist. He was a warrior of the mind, training for the inevitable battles of fate. He called it practicing poverty. He was deliberately inoculating himself against the fear of loss. He was teaching his mind and his body a fundamental truth. I can handle this. After a few days of this practice, he would return to his comfortable life, not with a sense of relief, but with a profound sense of gratitude and an unshakable inner fortitude. He had faced the demon of poverty in a controlled environment and discovered it was not the monster his mind had made it out to be. He had expanded his emotional and physical range. He had proven his inner narrator wrong. For Elias, his entire life had been an exercise in avoiding hardship. He took the easiest route, the path of least resistance. His job was unfulfilling, but it was safe. His relationships were superficial, but they were uncomplicated. He had built a life that was as comfortable and as fragile as a house of cards. The alley was a hurricane. It was an unchosen, involuntary hardship of the highest order, and his lifetime of comfort-seeking had left him utterly bankrupt of the resources needed to face it. He had no stored reserves of resilience. He had never lifted the weights of adversity, so when a real boulder was dropped on him, he was instantly crushed. This is the state of most modern men. We are lions who have been raised in a zoo, fed a steady diet of pre-cut meat, and protected from all threats. We still possess the heart of a lion, but we have the muscles of a lamb. Then, one day, the zoo door is left open, and we are released into the Serengeti of real life, and we are shocked when we find ourselves unable to hunt, unable to fight, unable to survive. The journey to a relentless mind requires that you turn your life into a voluntary training ground. It means you must actively seek out the friction that the world tries so desperately to eliminate. You must become the architect of your own challenges. This doesn't mean you have to sell all your possessions and live in the woods. It means you start small. You start with the things you instinctively flinch away from. Take the cold shower. The narrator will scream that it's unbearable, that you'll get sick, that it's pointless suffering. Do it anyway. As the cold water hits your skin, your body goes into shock. Your heart rate increases. You gasp for air. Your entire being is screaming at you to turn the handle back to warm. In this moment, you are at a crossroads. You can obey the voice of comfort, or you can impose your will upon it. Hold your ground. Breathe. Calm your mind in the midst of the chaos. After 30 seconds, a minute, you will notice a shift. Your body begins to adapt. Your mind, forced to surrender to the present moment, becomes calm and clear. You have taken a stimulus that your brain interpreted as a threat, and you have retrained it. You have taught it that you are in command, not your fleeting sensations of comfort. You step out of the shower not just cleaner, but stronger. You have won the first battle of the day before most people have even silenced their alarm clock. Extend this principle into other areas of your life. Intermittent fasting. Don't just eat whenever you feel the slightest pang of hunger. Learn to sit with the discomfort. Teach your body that it is not a slave to its appetites. You will discover a new level of mental clarity and discipline, and you will rob the fear of scarcity of its power. You will know on a cellular level that you can function and function well without constant gratification. Go to the gym and lift heavy weights. Push yourself to the point of failure. The narrator will tell you to stop, that you might get hurt, that it's too hard. Ignore it. The last rep, the one where your muscles are screaming and your form is about to break, that is where growth happens. It is in that moment of extreme voluntary hardship that you are not just building muscle, you are forging character. You are teaching yourself to lean into resistance, to find strength in the struggle. Seek out social discomfort. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Go to the event where you don't know anyone. Make eye contact with strangers. The narrator will concoct elaborate horror stories of rejection and humiliation. Walk into that story and see what actually happens. More often than not, you will find that the monster was just a shadow. And even if you do face rejection, you will learn something far more valuable than social acceptance. You will learn that you can survive it. You will learn that the opinion of another person is not a fatal blow. It is just data. Elias had none of this training. His comfort was his curse. As the men approached him, his mind and body, unaccustomed to any form of stress, went into complete system failure. His threat response, which should have been a powerful tool for survival, became a debilitating paralysis. He was a soldier sent to war without ever having gone through basic training. He didn't know how to control his breathing, how to focus his mind, how to move his body with purpose under duress. The practice of voluntary hardship is your basic training. Each cold shower, each skipped meal, each grueling workout, each uncomfortable conversation is a repetition, a drill. You are building the mental and physical armor you will need when life decides to ambush you in an alley. You are turning your body from a liability into an asset. You are turning your mind from a constant source of alarm into a calm, focused weapon. Don't wait for the crisis to reveal your weakness. Expose your weakness to yourself, on your own terms, in a controlled environment. Go to war with your own comfort-seeking self every single day, so that when the real war comes to your doorstep, you will not be a startled civilian. You will be a hardened soldier, ready for battle, with a quiet confidence that comes only from having walked through the fire of your own volition. You will be the one who does not flinch, because you have chosen to face the flinchworthy every single day. You will have a mind that is not just relentless, but unbreakable. The third foundational practice for cultivating a relentless mind is the conscious control of your focus. Where your attention goes, your energy flows and your reality is built. Most people are not in control of their attention. They are at the mercy of a wandering mind, hijacked by every notification, every distraction, every stray thought, every sensational headline. Their focus is a rudderless ship, tossed about by the chaotic winds of the external world and the turbulent currents of their own internal monologue. This is a state of mental slavery. You cannot build a powerful, intentional life if you are not the master of your own focus. The voice of fear, the inner narrator, understands this principle better than you do. Its primary strategy for keeping you weak and compliant is to hijack your focus. It does this by constantly directing your attention to two things: the unchangeable past and the uncontrollable future. It forces you to ruminate on your past mistakes. It plays a highlight reel of your every failure, every embarrassment, every moment of weakness. You lie in bed at night, and instead of resting, you are forced to rewatch the cringeworthy thing you said at a party 5 years ago. You are made to feel the shame, the regret, the helplessness all over again. This is not productive reflection. This is self-flagellation. It is a pointless expenditure of mental and emotional energy that keeps you trapped in a cycle of negativity and self-doubt. By keeping your focus locked on the past, the narrator ensures that you carry the weight of your history into every new moment, making it impossible to move forward with confidence. Then, when it's done torturing you with the past, it shifts its attention to the future. It creates elaborate, terrifying fantasies of everything that could possibly go wrong. It paints vivid pictures of failure, rejection, poverty, and loss. This is what we call anxiety. Anxiety is not a mysterious illness. It is a disorder of focus. It is the inability to keep your attention in the only place where you have any power, the present moment. Your mind is living in a future that does not exist, and your body is reacting as if the imagined threats are real. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your stomach churns. You are in a state of fight or flight, but there is nothing to fight and nowhere to flee. The enemy is a phantom, a ghost created by your own undisciplined mind. Elias was a master of this mental time travel. As he stood in the alley, his mind was not fully present. Part of his focus was on the past. How did I get here? What stupid decisions did I make to end up in this alley? I should have taken a different route. I should have learned to fight. I should have been a different person. Another part of his focus was on the future. They're going to kill me. It's going to be painful. What will happen to my sketches? No one will even know who I was. He was simultaneously drowning in regret and paralyzed by anxiety. His focus was fractured, scattered, and utterly useless. He was anywhere but in the here and now, the only place where a solution could be found. The relentless mind is a mind that has been trained to be present. It has been disciplined to anchor its focus in the reality of the current moment, regardless of how uncomfortable that moment may be. This is the essence of mindfulness, stripped of all its soft, New Age connotations. It is not about relaxation, it is about concentration. It is a warrior's practice. The foundational exercise for training your focus is simple, but not easy. Pay attention to your breath. Sit down for 5 minutes, close your eyes, and do nothing but observe the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. It sounds trivial, but within seconds you will discover the wild, untamed nature of your own mind. Your focus will be dragged away by a thought about work, a memory, a sound in the next room, an itch on your nose. Your job is not to get frustrated. Your job is not to try to empty your mind. Your job is simply to notice that your attention has wandered, and then, gently but firmly, bring it back to the breath. This is the workout. Every time you bring your focus back, you are doing a bicep curl for your prefrontal cortex. You are strengthening the muscle of your attention. You are exercising your ability to choose where your focus goes. When you can do this with your breath in a quiet room, you can start to do it in the chaos of your daily life. When you are in a conversation, you are fully in the conversation. You are not thinking about what you're going to say next or what you need to buy at the grocery store. You are listening, present, and engaged. When you are working on a task, you are fully immersed in that task. You are not constantly checking your phone or your email. You are in a state of deep work, a flow state where you are at your most creative and productive. When you are in a crisis, like Elias in the alley, this training becomes a matter of life and death. The untrained mind fractures under pressure. The trained mind becomes hyper-focused. The relentless mind, when faced with a threat, does not waste its precious cognitive resources on the past or the future. It anchors itself in the present. It asks, what is happening right now? What are the facts? What are my resources? What is the single most effective action I can take in this exact moment? Elias' moment of clarity, the chuckle, was the moment his focus snapped back to the present. He stopped lamenting his past weakness, and he stopped catastrophizing about his future demise. He became present to the absurdity of his situation. He became present to the men in front of him, seeing them not as mythical monsters, but as human beings. He became present to the feeling of the cold brick on his back, the gravel under his feet, the air in his lungs. In this state of presence, the overwhelming noise of fear and regret was replaced by a sharp, clear signal. His senses, which had been dulled by his internal chaos, came alive. He could see the way the bigger man shifted his weight, the nervous tick of the smaller one. He could smell the faint scent of alcohol on their breath. He was gathering data. He was operating in the real world, not the horror movie playing in his head. The control of your focus is not a passive state. It is an active, ongoing battle. The world is designed to steal your attention. Your own mind is a natural-born wanderer. You must be vigilant. You must be disciplined. You must practice every single day. Meditate. Single task. Put your phone away. Be where you are fully. Because in the critical moments of your life, the quality of your focus will determine the quality of your outcome. A scattered mind is a weak mind. A focused mind is a relentless mind. It is a mind that can cut through the noise of fear and see the path forward. It is the mind of a warrior, a creator, a leader. It is the mind that will allow you to not just survive the alleys of your life, but to conquer them. The fourth bastion of a relentless mind is the reframing of your relationship with failure. From our earliest days, we are taught to fear failure. We are conditioned to see it as an indictment of our character, a permanent stain on our record. A failed test means you are stupid. A failed business means you are a loser. A failed relationship means you are unlovable. We develop a deep, visceral aversion to the very idea of failing. This fear becomes one of the most powerful weapons in the arsenal of your inner narrator. It uses the threat of failure to keep you from taking risks, from stepping outside your comfort zone, from pursuing anything that isn't a guaranteed success. Don't start that business, it whispers. You'll probably fail and everyone will laugh at you. Don't ask that person out, it cautions. They'll probably reject you and you'll feel like a fool. Don't try to learn that new skill, it advises. You'll be terrible at it at first and you'll just get discouraged. The fear of failure is the cage that keeps so many people locked in a life of mediocrity. They choose the slow, soul-crushing failure of inaction over the possibility of a fast, educational failure of action. They would rather be a spectator in the game of life than risk being the player who misses the shot. The relentless mind fundamentally rejects this paradigm. It does not see failure as an endpoint, but as a data point. It does not view failure as a judgment on its worth, but as an essential part of the process of growth and mastery. It adopts the mindset of a scientist in a laboratory. A scientist who runs an experiment that doesn't produce the expected result does not throw their hands up in despair and declare themselves a failure scientist. They do not take the result personally. They look at the data and say, "Interesting. That didn't work. What can I learn from this? What variable do I need to change for the next iteration?" Every failure is simply feedback. It is the universe giving you a piece of information. It is telling you that your approach was flawed, your strategy was incomplete, or your understanding was mistaken. It is a signpost pointing you in a different direction. To be afraid of failure is to be afraid of information. It is to be afraid of the very thing you need most to succeed. Elias was a product of a failure-averse life. His sketches, the ones in his satchel, were his passion. He dreamed of being a professional artist, of creating worlds on paper that would move and inspire people. But he had never shown his work to anyone. He had never submitted it to a gallery. He had never even taken a formal art class. Why? Because the fear of failure was a monolithic wall in his path. The narrator in his head had convinced him that if he were to show his work and it was rejected, it would not just be a rejection of his drawings. It would be a rejection of his very soul. It would be a final, irrevocable verdict that he had no talent, that his dream was a pathetic delusion. So, to protect himself from that potential pain, he kept his dream locked away in a satchel, where it was safe, and where it was slowly suffocating. His art, and by extension his life, was in a state of arrested development. He had chosen the guaranteed failure of never trying over the possibility of failing on the path to success. The shift in mindset required is profound. You must learn to separate your identity from your outcomes. Your results are not you. Your successes are not you. Your failures are not you. They are simply the results of the actions you took, based on the knowledge you had at the time. When you can create this separation, failure loses its emotional sting. It is no longer a personal attack. It is a tuition payment for the school of life. And the lessons it teaches are the most valuable ones you will ever learn. You learn more from a single, well-analyzed failure than you do from a dozen easy successes. Success can be misleading. It can be the result of luck or timing or factors outside your control. It can breed arrogance and complacency, but failure is a master teacher. It is brutally honest. It shines a spotlight on your weaknesses, your blind spots, and your areas for improvement. A relentless mind does not just tolerate failure, it seeks it out. It understands that if you are not failing, you are not pushing your limits. You are playing it safe. You are stagnating. The goal is not to avoid failure, but to fail intelligently. Fail fast, fail forward, fail cheap. Don't bet the entire farm on one untested idea. Run small experiments. Test your assumptions. Get feedback early and often. The tech industry has a mantra: move fast and break things. This is the spirit of intelligent failure. It is a recognition that innovation and progress are impossible without a willingness to get things wrong. In the alley, Elias was facing the ultimate failure, the failure to protect his own life. The narrator was screaming at him that his entire existence had been a failure, leading to this pathetic end. But in his moment of transformation, a different perspective began to emerge. He realized that the real failure wasn't being in the alley. The real failure was the lifetime of small evasions, the fear of rejection, the avoidance of risk that had left him so weak and unprepared. The failure had happened long before he ever set foot in that alley. It was the failure to live, truly live, because he was too afraid of getting it wrong. This realization was liberating. If he was already a failure in the most important sense, then what did he have to lose? There was a strange freedom in hitting rock bottom. There was nowhere to go but up. He could finally take a risk, the biggest risk of his life, because the alternative, the continuation of his timid, failure-averse existence, was no longer acceptable. He was done with the slow failure of inaction. He was ready for the glorious, uncertain possibility of action. How do you begin to cultivate this new relationship with failure? You start by celebrating your attempts, not just your successes. When you try something new and it doesn't work out, you do not beat yourself up. You say, "Good, I took a risk. I learned something. Now what's the next experiment?" You create a failure resume, a list of all the things you have tried and failed at. You look at it not with shame, but with pride. This is a record of your courage, your ambition, your willingness to engage with life. It is a testament to the fact that you are a player in the arena, not a critic in the stands. Surround yourself with the stories of successful people, and you will find that their paths are littered with failures. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before he became president. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. They were not immune to failure. They were simply relentless in their response to it. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of success. It is the crucible in which your character is forged, your skills are honed, and your resolve is tested. Embrace it. Learn from it. Let it be the fuel that propels you forward. A mind that is not afraid to fail is a mind that is free to create, to explore, to innovate, and ultimately to conquer. It is a mind that cannot be stopped, because every obstacle is just another lesson. Every setback is just another setup for a comeback. It is, in its very essence, a relentless mind. The fifth and final cornerstone for the architecture of a relentless mind is the cultivation of a transcendent purpose. This is the keystone that holds all the other pillars in place. Without a purpose, a why that is bigger than yourself, all the discipline, resilience, and focus in the world will eventually crumble. A life without purpose is a life lived on the defensive. Your primary motivation is the avoidance of pain and the pursuit of pleasure. You seek comfort, security, and the approval of others. Your goals are small, self-centered, and ultimately unfulfilling. You want a nice car, a big house, a comfortable retirement. There is nothing inherently wrong with these things, but they are not a source of enduring strength. They are external rewards that can be given and taken away. A man whose motivation is a bigger paycheck will buckle under pressure that a man whose motivation is to provide for his family will withstand. A man who works out to look good at the beach will quit long before the man who works out to be strong enough to protect his children. The why is the source of your power. It is the deep well from which you draw your energy when your willpower is exhausted. It is the North Star that guides you through the darkest nights of your soul. A transcendent purpose is a reason for your existence that extends beyond your own selfish concerns. It is a commitment to a cause, a principle, a community, or a legacy. It is the thing you are willing to suffer for. It is the hill you are willing to die on. Elias, for most of his life, was a man without a purpose. His driving force was fear. His goal was to get through each day with the minimum amount of discomfort. He was a ship without a destination, drifting on the ocean of life, at the mercy of every wind and wave. His art, his sketches, could have been his purpose. It was the one thing that made him feel alive, the one area where he felt a spark of the divine. But he had not committed to it. He treated it as a hobby, a private indulgence. He had not connected it to a larger why. Why did he draw? What message did he want to convey? Whose lives did he want to touch with his work? He had never asked these questions. And so his art remained a collection of potential, locked in a satchel. It had no power because he had not given it a purpose. It could not save him in the alley because it was not a part of a mission. It was just a hobby. In that alley, facing his own mortality, the question of purpose becomes brutally immediate. What have you lived for? If this is the end, what was the point? The terror of a meaningless death is far greater than the terror of physical pain. As Elias stood there, a nascent purpose began to form in the crucible of his fear. It wasn't a grand, fully formed mission statement. It was a raw, primal urge. It was the desire to not let his story end like this. It was the refusal to die as a victim, a footnote, a ghost. His purpose in that moment became a simple, powerful declaration: I will not be erased. This purpose, born of desperation, was the fuel that ignited his will to act. It was no longer just about survival. It was about defiance. It was about honoring the flicker of potential within him that he had neglected for so long. It was about earning the right to draw another breath, to put another line on paper. Finding your purpose is not a mystical process. It does not require you to go on a retreat or read 100 self-help books. It begins with a series of honest questions you must ask yourself. What makes you angry? What injustice in the world fires you up? Anger, when disciplined, is a profound source of purpose. It is a sign that you have encountered something that violates your deepest values. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? If money were no object, how would you spend your days? The answer to this question points towards your passions, the activities that make you feel energized and alive. Who do you admire most in the world? What qualities do they possess that you wish you had? The people we admire are often reflections of our own untapped potential, our own latent values. What do you want your eulogy to say? When you are gone, what do you want people to remember you for? This morbid thought experiment is one of the most powerful ways to clarify what truly matters to you. Your purpose does not have to be to cure cancer or solve world hunger. A purpose can be to be the best father your children could ever have. It can be to create a beautiful garden that brings joy to your neighbors. It can be to master a craft and teach it to others. The scale of the purpose is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that it is authentic to you, and that it is big enough to pull you through the inevitable hardships you will face. Once you have an inkling of your purpose, you must commit to it. You must orient your life around it. It becomes the filter through which you make decisions. When faced with a choice, you ask, does this move me closer to my purpose or further away? This simplifies your life immensely. It cuts through the noise of trivial choices and competing desires. A man with a purpose does not have time for petty distractions. He does not have the energy for pointless drama. He is a man on a mission. His life has a narrative arc, a sense of direction. This is what makes a person charismatic and compelling. We are drawn to people who have a purpose because they radiate a sense of power and certainty that is rare in our aimless, distracted world. The relentless mind is a purpose-driven mind. It is this purpose that allows it to endure the voluntary hardship, to learn from failure, to maintain its focus, and to challenge its inner narrator. When the narrator says, "You can't do this, it's too hard," the purpose-driven mind replies, "It doesn't matter if it's hard, it is necessary." When failure knocks it down, the purpose-driven mind gets back up, not because it is fearless, but because the mission is more important than its bruised ego. Elias in the alley found his initial, raw purpose, to not be erased. This purpose gave him the strength to straighten his back, to meet the gaze of his attackers. It was the why that allowed him to access the how. What happened next in that alley is less important than the transformation that occurred within him. He may have gotten beaten. He may have ended up in the hospital. But he did not end up a victim. He ended up a man who had found a reason to fight. He walked out of that alley, one way or another, with the seed of a new life within him. A life that would be dedicated to something more than just avoiding fear. A life that would be about expressing the art he had kept hidden. A life where the satchel was no longer a tomb for his dreams, but an arsenal for his mission. This is the final and most crucial step. Find your why. Find the thing you are willing to bleed for, and then organize your entire life around it. Because a man with a purpose is a force of nature. He is no longer a leaf in the wind. He is the storm. And a mind that is powered by such a storm is not just relentless. It is unstoppable. The confrontation was not a scene from a movie. There was no sudden display of martial arts prowess, no witty one-liners. There was only the raw, ugly reality of violence. Elias, fueled by his newfound, desperate purpose, did not surrender. He did not cower. He held his ground. He met their aggression not with equal aggression, but with an unnerving stillness. He did not fight them in the way they expected. He fought the battle within himself, and that inner victory projected an energy they did not know how to interpret. He moved, not with the panicked flailing of a victim, but with the economic, purposeful motions of someone trying to solve a problem. The problem was creating space, finding an exit, surviving. He used his satchel, not as a weapon, but as a shield, deflecting a clumsy punch. The impact jarred his arm, sending a shockwave of pain up to his shoulder, but it also sent a shockwave of information to his brain. I can withstand a blow. It hurts, but it does not break me. This was a revelation. It was a piece of data that directly contradicted a lifetime of stories his narrator had told him about his own fragility. The scuffle was short, brutal, and chaotic. He was knocked to the ground. A boot connected with his ribs, and the air exploded from his lungs in a ragged gasp. Pain, white-hot and blinding, tore through him. And in that moment, as he lay on the filthy gravel, looking up at the leering faces and the sliver of uncaring night sky, the old narrator screamed its final, desperate plea. "This is it. You failed. Give up. It's over." But another voice was present now. A quieter, deeper voice, the voice of his purpose. And it said only one thing: get up. He got up. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his hands and knees, then to his feet. His body was a symphony of agony. His head swam, but he was standing, and the look in his eyes was not the look of a defeated animal. It was the look of a man who had discovered that his capacity for punishment was far greater than he had ever imagined. It was the look of a man who was no longer afraid of pain, only of meaninglessness. His defiance, his refusal to stay down, changed the dynamic. The predators were confused. Their sport was being ruined. The pleasure of domination requires the submission of the victim. This broken, bleeding man was refusing to play his part. They had broken his body, but they had failed to break his spirit. And in that failure, they had inadvertently forged their own defeat. A car's headlights suddenly swept across the alley's entrance, and the sound of an engine grew louder. The men, startled, exchanged a nervous glance. Their window of opportunity, their bubble of consequence-free cruelty, had burst. With a final curse, they turned and fled, melting back into the shadows from which they came. Elias was left alone, standing under the harsh light, his body a map of their encounter. He was a wreck, but he was a victorious wreck. He had not won the physical fight. He had won the spiritual war. He had met the ultimate fear, and he had not blinked. He had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had been the first to look away. He leaned against the cold brick wall, the same wall he had pressed himself against in terror what felt like a lifetime ago. He slid down to the ground, his legs no longer able to support him. He looked at his satchel, lying a few feet away. He crawled to it, his ribs screaming with every movement. He pulled it open. His hands, shaking and bruised, reached inside and pulled out his sketchbook. He flipped it open to a blank page. With a piece of charcoal he always kept with him, he began to draw. He drew the alley. He drew the menacing shadows. He drew the single, defiant spark of the dying fire. He drew the fear. He gave it a face, a form. He took the chaos and the terror and he began to impose order upon it. He was not just an artist. He was an alchemist, turning the lead of his trauma into the gold of his art. His lines were shaky, clumsy, distorted by the pain and the adrenaline, but they were the most honest lines he had ever drawn. They were lines filled with the raw, brutal truth of his experience. This was his new purpose in action, to not be erased, to take the ugliest parts of his life and transform them into something of meaning, something of power, something that another lost soul might one day see and find a flicker of their own strength in. He did not know what the future held. He knew the path ahead was long and difficult. The fear was not gone forever. The narrator would be back with new stories, new tactics. The work of forging a relentless mind is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice. But he now had the tools. He had the pillars of strength to build upon. He understood his true enemy. He knew the value of voluntary hardship. He had felt the power of a focused mind. He had reframed his relationship with failure. And he had found a purpose that was stronger than his pain. He was the man who had walked into the alley, but he was also the man who was being born from it. A man who understood that the relentless mind is not something you are given. It is something you build, brick by painful brick, scar by beautiful scar. It is built in the choices you make every single day. The choice to take the cold shower, the choice to have the difficult conversation, the choice to face the blank page, the choice to get back up when you are knocked down. You who are listening to this, you are standing in your own alley. You are facing your own fears. You have a choice. You can remain the ghost in your own life, a collection of unfulfilled potential and quiet regrets, or you can begin the work. You can declare war on the tyranny of your own mind. You can start laying the foundation for a life of strength, purpose, and unshakable resilience. Look at your own satchel. What dreams have you locked away out of fear? What potential have you allowed to suffocate in the name of safety? The time for safety is over. The world does not need more safe people. It needs more dangerous people. People who are dangerous to mediocrity. People who are dangerous to their own limitations. People who are dangerous to the status quo of quiet desperation. The ashes of your fear are not the end of your story. They are the beginning. They are the fertile ground from which something new and powerful can rise. A mind that does not bend to circumstance. A will that does not break under pressure. A spirit that does not bow to fear. A relentless mind. The work starts now. The choice is yours. What will you build from your ashes? Don't just watch this video and feel a momentary surge of inspiration. That is the path of the passive consumer, the ghost. Take one of these principles and apply it. Today, right now. Go take the coldest shower of your life. Write down the one conversation you've been avoiding and make a plan to have it this week. Meditate for just 3 minutes. Write down one failure from your past and list 3 lessons you learned from it. Define your purpose, even if it's just for the next 24 hours. The purpose to be a little stronger, a little braver, a little more present than you were yesterday. This is not a community of spectators. This is a forge. We are here to build ourselves into weapons. Share in the comments not what you liked about this video, but what you are going to do because of it. What is the first brick you will lay in the foundation of your relentless mind? Your declaration is a contract with yourself and a source of strength for others. In the next chapter of the MidQuest Chronicles, we will explore the art of turning envy into fuel, of using the success of others not as a source of self-pity, but as a map to your own greatness. You will not want to miss it. Subscribe and join the legion of minds who are choosing to rise from the ashes. The journey is just beginning. Rise and become relentless.